Welcome to Area 2071, a research-driven metaverse podcast.
Hey everyone, it's George from Area 2071. Area 2071 is a project of Blockchain DXB. In this podcast series of Area 2071, we focus on Metaverse, everything related to Metaverse and NFT. This podcast primarily focuses on education, information, research and news about Metaverse across the globe. We will discuss some latest news, technological innovation and adoption of Metaverse. We will also discuss how cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology merges with Metaverse. Finally, we also focus on Dubai, UAE and Middle East in the world of Metaverse. So, let's kick this thing off. Hello citizens from Metaverse, it's George from Blockchain DXB, and in today's episode, we're going to kickstart by looking at the price of cryptocurrencies that are linked to the Metaverse platforms. So we'll be looking at the price of ApeCoin, Decentraland, Sandbox, Axie Infinity and Theta Network. The entire cryptocurrency market is on an absolute turmoil. So we won't be looking at or discussing the price of cryptocurrencies, but looking at only the top Metaverse platforms. We're going to explore the market cap and 24-hour trading volume of all Metaverse platforms or the top performing Metaverse platforms. As we know that the Terra Luna collapse has a dominant effect on other cryptocurrencies, which had an impact on Metaverse platforms as well. Currently, what the world is facing right now is inflation, stagflation, and recession. It'll be really interesting to see how Metaverse prevails with deglobalization and new world order set in the next coming months, years, and decades to follow. In today's episode, we will be very briefly looking at the Metaverse Standards Forum. Yesterday, there was quite a lot of fake news in mainstream cryptocurrency platforms such as CoinDesk, Cointelegraph, and the headline looked like all the tech giants were trying to keep Apple aside or did not want Apple to join the Metaverse Standards Forum. This is definitely not true. The truth is, absolutely anyone can join the Metaverse Standards Forum. As a matter of fact, I signed up for the Metaverse Standards Forum from Dubai, and I am also a part of the Metaverse Standards Forum. So, we will be discussing that in today's episode. We are also going to be discussing a Metaverse event that I would be conducting on the 22nd of this month, something which we covered in yesterday's Blockchain DXB podcast, that is the Crypto and Coffee at 8 for the 23rd. The next thing is a big one. We're going to discuss about Meta, that is Facebook's Avatar store, and share information about why and how they are going to be investing $10 billion in Metaverse. We will also talk about the headset, that is Starburst. Now they have different prototypes, so we'll be exploring that. That just gives us a glimpse of what Meta is currently doing with reference to the VR headsets. What are the expectations? And most possibly, what the future headset will look like. Then we move on to consulting experts' take on the Metaverse. So we will be discussing what the V Forum, that is the World Economic Forum, discussed about Metaverse, what Boston Consulting Group talks about Metaverse from a corporate point of view, and the Big Four. Regarding the Big Four, I won't explain all the entire details, but just share the headlines of what the Big Four auditing firms are talking about the Metaverse. Finally, we're going to look at the top 5 Metaverse news from Dubai, some really cool events which are taking place, and also the event by Blockchain DXB, which I just talked a few minutes ago, and also in yesterday's podcast. So welcome everyone, it's Atim, you're in Dubai. You're listening to Metaverse Everything, where we focus solely on Metaverse. We also cover top 5 Metaverse news from around the world, and top 5 Metaverse news from Dubai. Metaverse Everything is a research-driven podcast focusing on education and informational content about Metaverse and its impact in the upcoming years. Remember, Monday to Thursdays, we have Crypto and Coffee at 8, where we cover top news and information pertaining to Bitcoin, blockchain, beyond blockchain, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, DeFi, and Metaverse as well. How the series of episodes under Crypto and Coffee at 8 works is, we usually cover top news and information pertaining to the price of cryptocurrencies, some major breaking news, occasionally short and sweet news as well. The other two news from the Crypto and Coffee at 8 podcast revolves around Dubai, UAE, and Middle East in the world of Bitcoin, blockchain, beyond blockchain, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, DeFi, and Metaverse. So, let's kickstart Metaverse Everything episode. Start off by discussing the price for Metaverse platforms. So let's look at cryptocurrency platforms that are linked to the Metaverse. I'm going to be discussing only the top 5 cryptocurrency projects that are linked to Metaverse platforms. So it's 24th of June and Apecoin is currently at $4.45, and since the last 24 hours it is up by 5.23%. Decentraland, that is Mana, is 0.91 cents and it is up by 4.77%. Sandbox, that is Sand, is $1.07 and since the last 24 hours it is up by 10.37%. Axie Infinity, that is AXS, is $16.97 and since the last 24 hours it is up by 19.35%. Theta Network, that is Theta, is $1.38 and is up by 10.48%. Considering what has happened with Terra Luna and the domino effect it had on other cryptocurrencies, if you look at the price only for the last 24 hours, I would say that the cryptocurrency platforms linked to Metaverse are doing fairly good. But if you were to compare it, let's say at the start of the year when it was a bull market, the cryptocurrency platforms are not doing good at all. The market cap is at $11.8 billion. And once again, guys, I'm looking at only the cryptocurrency platforms that are linked to Metaverse. The 24-hour trading volume is down to $2.3 billion. So definitely not good. But since the last 24 hours, the market cap is up by 8.3% and the 24-hour trading volume is up by 12.61%. What happens is on weekends, that is on a Sunday, the market cap and 24-hour trading volume tends to go down. So if you were to look at the price of these, let's say on Monday, it will be far below than what it is. Let's kickstart today's news with the major news by Meta. So Meta had a live session, that is Mark Zuckerberg joined Eva Shen. Eva Shen is the VP of Fashion Partnership on Instagram. They had a live session. I believe that was for well over 11 minutes long. And in that live session, they discussed the vision of avatars and Metaverse. So you can watch it directly on Instagram. Now, in case if you want to find that link, you can go to my LinkedIn profile or just type in Mark Zuckerberg Live on Instagram. I'm pretty much sure you will get a link for that. The news is that Meta of Facebook are rolling out the Meta Avatar store to offer us more ways to customize our avatar. So imagine you will be in a position to go ahead and have your own avatar. But the question is, will you be willing to pay for it? Personally, I'm not sure if I'll be willing to pay additional for it. As long as it is free, I'll definitely go for it. I would rather have my own picture and maybe try to create an avatar using my own picture. But if given a choice between, let's say, an avatar or using my picture, personally, I would prefer using my own picture. But the news is that they are launching the store with digital outfits to purchase from Balenciaga, Prada, and Thom Browne. It could be interesting to see if it's using my own picture, if I can probably try using digital outfit. Again, is it something which I would do? Personally, I would not. Maybe Generation Z is into it. So that was one news regarding Meta and the avatar and how it is linked to Metaverse platforms. The next news, and this is something which I'm really a bit upset about, especially from mainstream media that cover cryptocurrencies. So the news is that Metaverse Standards Forum has been launched on the 21st of June 2022. There were rumors in clickbait headlines that said tech giants are forming this group and Apple is not a part of it. So if you just read through the headline, it gives you an impression that they are trying to have a monopoly and they do not want Apple. Now this is completely not true. I even listened to a couple of videos where they are saying that the tech giants are trying to create a forum and only selected individuals will be in that forum. Absolutely not true. Firstly, the website to go to Metaverse Standards Forum is www.metaverse-standards.org. The membership is completely free, open to any organization. As a matter of fact, I registered in Dubai using my company ID and it just got approved in a matter of 2 minutes. So this Metaverse Standards Forum is hosted by Kronos Group and the forum is open to any company, standards organization or university at absolutely no charge. And it is a very simple process. It took me less than a minute to actually go ahead and sign up for Metaverse Standards Forum. So what is the Metaverse Standards Forum? It's a leading standards organization, and companies unite to drive open metaverse interoperability. Now, the reason that they are doing is because they have understood a need for interoperability, and they've identified that currently there's a lack of interoperability. So they want to develop standards, that is, standard developing organizations. So the whole goal of Metaverse Standards Forum is to create a standard developing organization that is defined and evolving needed standards. So what they're going to have is a pragmatic action-based project, that is implementing, prototyping, hackathons, plugfests, and open source tooling. The first forum meeting is expected to start in July of this year. So right now there are 38 founding members, and all of the 38 founding members, they had a statement. The statement is really positive, and they are in support for founding members. You can also subscribe to the newsletter. So the Metaverse Standards Forum is definitely something really unique and interesting. The next news is about Metaverse event, and this is an event which I will be doing on the 22nd of July at 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Gulf Standard Time. So the event is called Metaverse, the Hype, Reality, and New World Order. You can register for this event completely free of cost via eventbrite.com. So go to eventbrite.com, type in blockchain DXB. Alternatively, you can just drop me an email to info@blockchaindxb.com. I'm going to do a bit of shilling. The event is essentially broken down into two parts. In part A, we're going to be talking about the history of Metaverse. We will define what is Metaverse, the hype around Metaverse, and New World Order, and where does Metaverse fit in. We'll also discuss the hardware and software needed in the Metaverse, and NFTs in the Metaverse. What role do they actually play? In part B, we're going to be discussing areas where Metaverse merges with the physical world. The next topic is of my keen interest, that is blockchain and the Metaverse. Do we actually need blockchain in the Metaverse, or can Metaverse function on its own itself, or is a hybrid Metaverse needed? We'll also discuss cryptocurrencies in the Metaverse, and also the role of central bank digital currencies in the Metaverse. And I'll also share news and events surrounding Metaverse in Dubai. So in case if you're trying to network or meet up with startups in Dubai, this is an event definitely need to attend to. The next news is about Mark Zuckerberg, and essentially he had a prototype. So what happened was that 2 days ago, Mark Zuckerberg posted a video on YouTube, and the series is called as Inside the Lab. I believe the series will have more episodes, and I hope that they have more updates surrounding this. Mark Zuckerberg, along with Michael Abrush, they had a video called as Inside the Lab, and they were talking about what it is going to take to build the next generation of displays so far as virtual reality headset is concerned and augmented reality headset is concerned. They talked intensively about the challenges that they are currently facing, and they discussed about having a realistic sense of presence and connecting with people all around the world and using Metaverse. Imagine being with someone, let's say a relative or friend or life partner, who's physically living miles and miles away from where you're at. So the whole idea of having Metaverse is the feeling of being there with someone who's literally miles far away. What is really interesting is to know is the importance of display that would be needed in the Metaverse. So they did showcase a couple of different prototypes. I'm just going to very briefly talk about it. They showcased some prototype and how it will be difficult in the near future to identify between reality and creativity. So we may be looking at the full fruition of Metaverse maybe in a decade's time from now, or maybe less. Probably by 2030 would be an ideal time frame. They also talked about how just looking at an image in the Metaverse is not important, but having an immersive experience is what is so critical, and interacting with this image. And this is where the whole notion of non-fungible token kicks in. There are a couple of cryptocurrency projects that are planning to devise or create NFTs that would actually communicate with you using artificial intelligence. So it will not be a pre-programmed script, but the NFTs would essentially try to communicate with you. Probably in a decade's time or so, we might get a much thorough idea. Michael Abrash talked about visual Turing test. This is clearly linked to Alan Turing. This phrase called visual Turing test is developed by Meta, is adopted by Meta and academic research, clearly based on Alan Turing, of course, and they explain what visual training test is. It is in a way similar to Alan Turing test, but a visual Turing test is something where an individual will not be able to identify or distinguish the difference between a virtual reality and a real world. So, if a prototype is able to pass the Turing test, that means it has been successful. So, extremely realistic if VR headsets can do that. That means they've actually passed the virtual Turing test. Now, currently, there are no such tests that exist. That is exactly what Meta and pretty much sure the competitors are trying to build. I personally think we might be looking at maybe a decade's time or so for such thing to materialize, because you also have to look at the internet bandwidth, you also have to look at the user experience. It needs to be really compact. But do you think that such systems does actually exist, and that is something that the US military might be using? In the video, they spoke about some prototype, and one of the prototype was called as butterscotch. This prototype was extremely bulky, but it had absolutely brilliant imagination with over 2.5 times better than Quest 2. So if you have used Quest 2, just imagine this prototype, that is butterscotch, which looks absolutely horrendous, is 2.5 times much better than Quest 2. So it's definitely not ready for shipping, and most likely it may not be shipped as well. But again, this is just a prototype, but it gives you an understanding of what Meta is doing in order to make us our experience so much better. Now, in that video, they also talk about some technical information, and what I really liked is that they talked about the depth of focus and how important retinal focus is needed to get better user experience, so that it makes it extremely realistic. But at this very same time, they also talked about the size of the VR headsets. It needs to be really compact, it needs to be really tiny, and even the battery usage. So it's a mixture of all these things. So the prototype butterscotch does provide great visual clarity, but it is not user friendly at all. The next prototype that they showed, it was called as halftone. This prototype focused on the depth of the image. It was extremely bulky. This prototype halftone is so clear that when you move your eye from the image, you tend to see a distortion. So that is also not ideally good, especially if you're planning to use Metaverse for a long time. And they shared some technical information, something called as nits. I'm really not sure what that nits means, but just to give you an example, let's say if you're watching a high definition TV that has 10,000 nits, and the best of virtual realities right now uses only 100 nits, and there is a possibility for VR headsets to use 10,000 nits and more. So that is something what Meta is currently working upon, and that's where I believe a lot of the funding of Meta, that is $10 billion, will be invested in. They also showed another prototype which was called as Starburst, and this is the image that you will actually see in Google and other news and headlines showing. This prototype is extremely bulky. You literally have to use two hands to use Starburst. But it does solve all of the challenges posed by previous prototypes, but it is extremely bulky. So Mark Zuckerberg, he also showed another prototype called as Hollow Cake. This device is not ready yet, but it just shows the size of what the next possible headset or by Meta most probably would look like. It is half the size of Oculus Quest 2. It does look really classy and very futuristic, and it uses some kind of holographic technology. Again, one of the problems with this particular prototype is something to do with light. It requires different light source. So again, this is all work in progress. I would really recommend you guys to go and watch that video maybe a couple of times. It gives you an idea of what Metaverse will currently be and the different stages of the experience that we might experience in Metaverse. And finally, they showed another prototype, and that particular prototype, I believe it is called as Mirror Lake. And that particular prototype, they only had an image, so they did not have a video, they did not have a physical device. And Mirror Lake is something that Michael Abrash and Mark Zuckerberg thinks would be the most perfect prototype. And once that thing gets materialized, that most likely will be a VR headset that Meta or Facebook will be launching. So do you think that the final headset or VR headset that Facebook or Meta will be launching. Will it be called Mirror Lake? I personally think it sounds like a really cool name. The prototype was only in theory and they just showed an image. They did not show an actual physical device. I would really recommend you guys to go and watch that video. It gives a very good understanding of what the different stages of metaverse experience we as customers would face. The next news is about World Economic Forum. Now in April, they published info on our metaverse journey. So the World Economic Forum, what they did was they surveyed platforms such as the Sandbox, Horizon Worlds, Decentraland, Mona, CryptoVoxels, Somanium, Roblox, Rec Room, Spatial VR Chat, and what they did was they evaluated them by 6 phases based on the user journey. So the 6 phases are consider, purchase, acquire, setup, exploration, repeat usage, and advocate. The first point that is considered, it talks about how metaverse industries and companies needs to focus on getting new users by convincing mainstream users to buy it. Personally, I think getting celebrities involved can just absolutely do that. Imagine Lionel Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo talks about getting into metaverse, or having a meet and greet in metaverse, or even Donald Trump having a rally in the metaverse. That just brings in a lot of users. You can also cater the advertisement based on location. I remember when Sachin Tendulkar, a legend in the sports of cricket, he signed up for Facebook. I believe there was a record-breaking number in India who signed up for Facebook within 24 hours. The next topic that they talk about so far as the metaverse journey is concerned is about purchasing and acquiring the headsets, so lower the entry barrier for users to buy. And this goes back to the point of Meta or Facebook. The headsets they're targeting at $100, which I think is fairly reasonable. In Dubai, it'll be roughly around 367 dirhams, extremely cheap. I remember the very first mobile that was launched, that was ridiculously expensive. But if you look at the price of mobile phones now, they are dirt cheap. And as the economies of scales goes down, products will be cheaper. Another trend which we are observing in the fintech sector and especially in Dubai as well is buy now, pay later. That would be a trend which will be incorporated in acquiring or buying metaverse headsets as well. A few weeks ago, Apple also announced BNP for its users, that is buy now, pay later. The third point is setup, making sure that the setup of metaverse journey is extremely easy. Now, did have Samsung Gear, and I must say it was an extremely easy process. Even Oculus is a really straightforward, easy process, and hopefully that continues. And maybe in the next Oculus device that they have, you may not require to have a Facebook account as well. That would be just taking it one step further. The fourth point is exploration, that is metaverse platforms needs to have different topics of interest, and I'm surely over time there will be areas of interest which we aren't even aware about. I was listening to an interesting podcast by Luke Franks called as Welcome to the Metaverse. He was talking about hyper reality TV, and one of his guests, that is Dan Phil, who's the president of Dark Slope, was talking about creating obstacle course race in the metaverse. So essentially what would happen is users get to create obstacles at home, but players anywhere in the world can play them. So thinking of something completely unique, and more importantly, getting the whole customers engaged in that and ways for users to even own their content. So important to think of innovative ways to explore in the metaverse is so critical. The next point is repeat usage. Metaverse platforms need to motivate users to keep coming back to use metaverse. And this is where, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, or even Twitter do a brilliant job. Are these motivation organic? Now, how often do we keep checking Instagram for no apparent reason, or Twitter or Facebook for no apparent reason? That is something that will eventually happen with metaverse. But the biggest hurdle I see is the actual physical device. So let's say if you're traveling and if your device is bulky, you would not literally go inside your bag, pick up the device. And what Meta envisioned a headset to be as simple as using sunglasses. So probably in a decade's time or less, the VR headsets will be as small as, let's say, using sunglasses. In that case, it does solve repeated usage by a milestone. The final point is about advocate. and channels where users want to promote or become advocates of Metaverse is so important. Well, I personally believe that this would be completely organic. What the article by the World Economic Forum says is that maybe building sharing mechanism and create sharing functions that would allow users to share their experience. But currently, they would only share it with social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, maybe Twitter, or maybe in television as well. The next thing I'd like to talk about is Boston Consulting Group. They have an article called as the Corporate Hitchhiker's Guide to the Metaverse. So this is not at an individual level, but more at a corporate level, at a business level. They have highlighted three areas that are intersected to each other. First one is augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality. The second one is metaverse world. And finally, Web3 and virtual assets, that is where the whole NFT kicks in. So AR, VR, and mixed reality, as per the data that the Boston Consulting Group has produced, says that currently there are 30 million headsets, 800 million mobile augmented reality users, and 16 billion has already been spent on marketing, hardware, and software. And I'm sure that this data has changed after Facebook changed the name from Facebook to Meta. So this data was created before Facebook changed the name to Meta. And regarding the second one, that is Metaverse World, because of powerful computing capacity and mass marketing availability on mobile phones, tablets, and PCs, there are currently 300 to 500 million active users. So the report essentially discusses 6 attributes of the metaverse or the metaverse world. That is, it needs to be persistent, so no pauses or continuous. Once you log into the headset, it needs to be continuous. The second one is synchronous and live. So if you're watching anything live, it needs to be consistent and live experiences. Concurrent, that is, multiple people will be using the platform at the same time, and this goes for individuals and businesses as well. It needs to be immersive, that is the fourth point, that is, making user get highly involved in the experience, an interactive experience that is in the digital and the physical world as well. And one thing what I can think about is a burger joint called Pickle. What they're planning to do is have a restaurant or burger in the metaverse and how that is linked to the physical world. So I'll be talking about that when I talk about the top 5 news from Dubai. The fifth one is functioning economy, where users can create, own, buy, sell, and trade digital assets and services. And finally, multiple contributors, that is, independently and commercially and non-commercially focused. They have also shared examples of Sandbox, VRChat, Zepato, Roblox, and Fortnite are currently doing that. The only thing I can think of is VRChat is the only one that uses headsets. Rest all of them are purely that can be used via a laptop or using a mobile phone. What they're talking about is how these three are interconnected. That is, your AR, VR, mixed reality is connected to the metaverse world, and that is connected finally to Web3 or virtual assets, that is NFTs. This is where the whole NFT notion kicks in, and how does it merge with the metaverse. They state that currently there are 30 million total NFT wallets, 1 million active NFT wallets, and over $40 billion are currently in NFT assets. And this is surely combining all the NFT assets. What I plan to do is, on this session on the 24th of July, we will definitely be looking at this in more detail so you guys get an understanding of how NFT merges with the metaverse platforms. So what they talk about in this article is an interesting concept called as flywheel or metaverse wheel. So it essentially starts like a user base. Once you have the user base and once it reaches critical mass, mainstream adoption will attract content creators and more users, but the core of it is having cheaper and better technology, and that is exactly what Meta is planning to do. They plan to make the headset of extremely high quality, get a lot of user base on board. The target is around $100, but again, the first thing is getting user base on board, and this is where I believe Meta has a competitive advantage. And having $100 is a very reasonable amount, and that will be only a one-time investment. And most likely, with economies of scale getting better and better, things are only going to get cheaper. Once the user rate is increased, it will incentivize users to create and trade assets and cultivate relationship, which is the second part of the flywheel. And finally, virtual and content assets will be able to create a creator economy. So essentially, the Metaverse wheel suggested by the BCG group is literally the shape of a vessel, and the cheaper and better technology is at the area where you blow the air into the vessel, and the rest is the user base, the content and virtual assets, creator ecosystem. So if you look at the image, you'll get a much better understanding. The next news is about the Big Four's take on the Metaverse. Now, I'm not going to go into detail, but there are 4 articles which are published by the Big Four, that is Deloitte's, Ernst & Young, KPMG, and PwC. I would really recommend you guys to go and read through the entire article. What Deloitte's article is, it's called as Metaverse's Future Possibilities and Pitfalls. So they focus on 4 things, that is standardization, market fragmentation, user interface, and governance. Ernst & Young's article is Metaverse is here to stay. They talk about the impact of 3D glasses, digital twin, and virtual clothing. KPMG, they don't have an article, but what they did, they created a collaboration hub between US and Canada. So the whole idea is in the Metaverse, employees will be able to connect, engage, and explore opportunities. It is not just for the employees. I think it is for the vendors and for the clients as well. PwC, they have purchased land in one of the Metaverse platforms called as Sandbox, and I believe they spent well over $10,000. And the reason they did that was to connect, engage, and explore opportunities in the Metaverse. The Metaverse is definitely here to stay. What I'm going to do next, guys, is I'm going to discuss the top 5 Metaverse news from around the world, starting with Meta. And this is something which I covered earlier as well. Meta, that is Facebook, is introducing Avatar store with digital outfits to purchase from Balenciaga, Prada, and Thom Browne, along with existing free outfit option. KPMG, they have bought a land in Sandbox, and it makes its first foray into Metaverse. They have opened its first collaboration hub between US and Canadian units. Metaverse Standards Forum. This is once again which I covered it at the start of the podcast. Metaverse and many tech giants from around the world have started the Metaverse Standards Forum, completely free for use. Anyone can join in. We also talked about the 4th thing, that is the Metaverse prototype headsets. Mark Zuckerberg showed prototype headsets, and they plan to support by investing $10 billion. Finally, the news from India, Yoshida Hospital, a hospital chain in Hyderabad, capital of the Indian state Telangana, has entered the Metaverse. So they are working with a decentralized that would hopefully help patients and help doctors offer much better services. The top 5 news from Dubai are as follows. On the 28th and 29th of this month, there is DIFC FinTech Week, that is Dubai International Finance Center, has an event that talks about Metaverse. So the topics explored at that event will be the Metaverse, Web3, and the inevitability of NFTs. So in case if you want to sign up for this event, drop me an email to info@blockchaindxb.com. So DIFC FinTech event takes place on the 28th and 29th of this month. Another event which takes place on the 12th and 13th of September is Meta Week, and this is organized by Next Change Group. This is the 2nd edition of Meta Week. It'll showcase large corporations that embrace the Metaverse and bet big on virtual realm development. The next news is about Blockchain DXB, where I plan to have an event on the 22nd of July called as Metaverse, the Hype Reality and New World Order. Again, you can check it on Eventbrite or drop me an email to info@blockchaindxb.com. Another event which takes place on the 6th and 7th of October is World Metaverse Show, and this is done by Tress Crowd Group. They'll be having different topics of discussion only about Metaverse, so it's World Metaverse Show. Finally, the news is about a burger giant called Pickle, and this is something which I just talked a few minutes ago. So the Dubai burger joint called Pickle without an E reveals first glimpse of Metaverse restaurant. So the restaurant will allow UAE-based customers to place orders in the Metaverse but receive the delivery in the physical world. This sounds like a perfect use case, but why go to a Metaverse? You can just do it online or probably in a mobile phone as well. What they can do is maybe have a meetup event in the metaverse. So let's say they could arrange a meetup event in the pickle burger joint, and maybe the first two customers, the first three customers get a discount or some kind of competition that only exists in the metaverse. That would be a good deal breaker. So that's all for today, guys, from the Metaverse Everything podcast. If you like this podcast, please click on the like button, give it a 5-star rating, and share the word across. And remember, Monday to Thursdays, 8 a.m. to 8:30 a.m., we have crypto and coffee at 8. So in case if you guys have any feedback or suggestions, drop me an email to info@blockchaindxb.com, or you can also drop me an email to info@area2071.com. Thanks so much for listening, guys, and have a great day ahead. Bye-bye.